There is also profound political risk. The US has near default because Congress refuses to raise the debt ceiling. This ceiling is a legal borrowing limit and a pure political weapon. Both parties use it to extract concessions, pushing deadlines until markets panic. In 2011, political dysfunction caused a historic US credit rating downgrade. The same crisis almost repeated in 2023. Each time, a last-minute resolution is found. But each time, the world wonders if this will be the time the US fails. A true default would be catastrophic globally. Treasury bonds are the bedrock of global finance. If they are not safe, then nothing is safe. Stock markets would crash and banks would fail. The global economy would contract violently. It would make the 2008 crisis look minor. The assumption is that rational actors will prevent this. The system muddles through because the alternative is unthinkable. That assumption has held so far. But assumptions are not guarantees. Let's revisit inflation, the silent killer of debt. Inflation means rising prices and falling money value. Lend $1,000 today, and its real value shrinks when paid back. You lose money in real terms, despite getting the same number of dollars back. This is great for borrowers like the US government. It acts as a stealth default, reducing the real debt burden. Governments tolerate moderate inflation. For this very reason, it erodes the real value of debt over time. Creditors, however, hate inflation. If your bond yields 2% but inflation is 3%, you are losing. The interest does not keep up with the dollar's declining value. Central banks target around 2% inflation. This is seen as stable, yet flexible for the economy. Controlling inflation is like steering a massive oil tanker. By the time you realize it's off course, correction is slow and painful. The Fed raised rates aggressively in 2022 and 2023 to combat high inflation. This made mortgages soar and businesses cut investment. There is no clean solution to this problem. Fight inflation too hard and you crash the economy. Don't fight it enough, and it spirals out of control. This destroys savings and erodes trust in the currency itself. Hyperinflation is the ultimate nightmare scenario. It happened in Weimar Germany in the 1920s. People needed wheelbarrows of cash to buy bread. Savings evaporated, and the middle class was wiped out. It created social chaos that led to fascism. It happened in Zimbabwe in the 2000s. Inflation hit billions of percent, and the currency was abandoned. It happened in Venezuela in the 2010s. The government printed money, destroying the economy and forcing exodus. The US is nowhere near hyperinflation today. Neither is Japan or Europe. But the dangerous mechanisms are all in place. Massive debt exists alongside central banks creating money to buy it. Political pressure to spend more is constant. The temptation to inflate away the debt is always there. If trust in the currency erodes, the spiral can happen fast. Trust is the only thing holding the entire system together. Trust that the government will repay its debts. Trust that the central bank will control inflation. Take away that trust, and the whole structure collapses. History provides clear examples of this playbook. The United Kingdom was the dominant 19th century economic power. The pound sterling was the global reserve currency. Britain's empire generated wealth, letting it borrow cheaply. 2 world wars destroyed that system. Britain borrowed heavily to fight, and its debt soared over 200% of GDP. The empire collapsed and the pound weakened. The US emerged as the new dominant global power. Britain spent decades, slowly and painfully. It cut spending, raised taxes, and devalued its currency. By the 1970s, Britain was in crisis, called the sick man of Europe. Brutal austerity under Thatcher stabilized the economy. Britain never regained its former dominance. The US replaced Britain as the global hegemon. The dollar became the reserve currency after Bretton Woods. This status has given the US enormous advantages for 80 years. But it is a privilege, not a birthright. It must be maintained through economic strength and political stability. If the US loses that status, consequences will be severe. Borrowing costs will rise, and the dollar will weaken. The currently manageable debt burden will become crushing. Japan offers a completely different lesson. Its debt-to-GDP ratio is over 260%, the highest in the developed world. Yet Japan has not collapsed. Its borrowing costs remain remarkably low. Japan borrows in its own currency, the yen. Its own citizens hold the vast majority of the debt. Over 90% of Japanese bonds are owned domestically. The Bank of Japan owns a huge portion of this debt. There is no foreign creditor Japan must answer to. Japan also runs a consistent trade surplus. This brings in foreign currency and strengthens the yen. Japanese society is incredibly stable and trusting, but Japan is economically stagnant. Growth has been near zero for 3 decades. Its population is aging and shrinking. Deflation has been a persistent, nagging problem. The Bank of Japan has tried every tool imaginable. Nothing has succeeded in jump-starting sustainable growth. Japan survives, but it does not thrive. It is a cautionary tale of debt as a permanent drag. You do not collapse, but you do not grow either. You are simply stuck. The United States is not Japan. The US population is still growing, though slowly. Its economy is more dynamic and innovative. The US is more willing to embrace creative destruction, but it is also more politically divided and socially fractured. The US is more dependent on foreign creditors than Japan. America cannot assume its citizens will always buy its debt. So where does all this leave us? The system works as long as everyone believes it works. The US government borrows trillions of dollars. The Federal Reserve supports this by buying bonds with created money. Foreigners lend because they believe they will be repaid. They see the dollar as the only viable alternative. This cycle continues, powered by belief. But belief is not infinite. Trust can and does erode over time. Systems that seem stable can crack catastrophically and suddenly. The warning signs are already visible to all. Debt is growing faster than the economy. Interest payments consume an ever larger share of the budget. Inflation is proving harder to control than central banks expected. Political dysfunction is becoming the unsettling norm. Foreign creditors are quietly diversifying away from the dollar. The global financial system is more interconnected and fragile than ever. None of this means a collapse is imminent. The system has survived major crises before. It will probably survive the next one as well. But each crisis leaves the system weaker. Each Fed intervention adds more debt and market distortion. Each political standoff erodes a little more essential trust. At some point, the simple math stops working. Lenders will demand higher rates because the risk is too high. The government will not be able to borrow enough to cover its obligations. The Fed will not be able to create money without triggering runaway inflation. At that point, the entire system breaks. The question of who owns the debt becomes irrelevant. If the debt cannot be repaid, ownership is just a worthless piece of paper. The real question becomes, who gets hurt? The answer, historically, is everyone. Creditors lose their money. Borrowers lose all access to credit. Savers lose their purchasing power. Workers lose their jobs. Social programs get brutally cut. Chaos inevitably follows. The tragedy is that this spiral is perfectly predictable. Economists have warned about it for years. The Congressional Budget Office publishes the dire projections. Everyone in power knows the dangerous trajectory. Changing it requires immense political courage and short-term pain. Those things are in critically short supply. So instead, we collectively kick the can down the road. We borrow more to pay for today. We hope tomorrow will figure itself out. We trust the system will hold, because it always has. We assume someone will always keep buying the bonds. We assume the Fed will keep creating money. We assume economic growth will eventually catch up. We assume it will all work out somehow. And maybe it will. Technological breakthroughs might unlock new growth. Political leaders might find the will to reform entitlements. The global economy might boom once more. Maybe the system is more resilient than the pessimists think. Or maybe we are just delaying the inevitable. Maybe the music is still playing and everyone is dancing. No one wants to be the first to sit down. Maybe the question is not asterisk if asterisk the system breaks, but asterisk when asterisk. Here is what we know for certain. The US government owes $36 trillion. The Federal Reserve holds $5 trillion of that debt. Foreign governments hold about $7 trillion. Domestic institutions and individuals hold the rest. Social Security and Medicare are owed trillions more in bonds. Interest payments are over $1 trillion a year and rising. The debt is very real. The obligations are very real. The interest is very real. But the system supporting it is built on abstract trust. Trust is psychological and can evaporate overnight. Who actually owns all this government debt? In the narrow sense, lots of people and institutions do. In a broader sense, we all do. We are all both creditors and debtors simultaneously. We pay taxes that fund the borrowing government. We get paid back with future taxes we also pay. We own treasury bonds in our retirement accounts. They are backed by a government that owes more than it can repay. We use a currency managed by a central bank. That bank creates money to buy government debt, devaluing our currency. It is a perfectly circular and self-referential system. It only works as long as no one looks too closely. The moment people start asking hard questions, the system becomes fragile. Can this debt actually ever be repaid? Is the dollar truly safe? What happens when Social Security's trust fund is depleted? What if China stops buying treasury bonds? What if the Fed loses control of inflation? That is precisely where we are now. We are not at the breaking point yet, but we are close enough to see it on the horizon. The smartest people in finance are already hedging their bets. They are moving into gold, real estate, and foreign currencies. They want assets not tied to government faith and credit. The system will continue until one day it doesn't. The debt will grow until one day it can't. Central banks will create money until the consequences become unbearable. When it all finally breaks, who owns the debt? The answer will be very simple. No one. You cannot own something that has no value. That is the uncomfortable truth nobody wants to say aloud. Government debt only has value because we believe it does. Take away that collective belief, and it is just numbers on a screen. They are promises that cannot be kept. It is a collective delusion we have all agreed to participate in. The alternative is simply too frightening to consider. So we keep dancing. We keep borrowing. We keep pretending this time is different. We pretend we are smarter than the Romans. We pretend we are smarter than the British. We pretend we are smarter than every fallen empire in history. Maybe we are, but history suggests we are not.